Hey everyone, and welcome back to Citywide Blackout, your home for the best creators from around the world. I'm your host, Max Bowen, and for this episode, I am very excited because we get to talk about one of my favorite webcomics of all time, Lackadaisy, which you can only check out on Webtoon, because now, folks, it is an animated pilot released about 2 or 3 weeks ago to 6.3 million views. And joining me now, I'm speaking with the creator of the comic, the writer and artist, Tracy Butler, Fable Siegel, the director, and kind of everything else for this production, and Zachary Nall, the 3D layout artist. Everyone, welcome to the show. It is so cool to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
Of course. So I want to begin by just kind of talking about how we got to this point. And I guess this question would go out to you, Tracy. How do we come from this webcomic with a massive, massive artist to now a animated feature?
So I kind of always envisioned Lackadaisy as an animated thing in my head. Anytime I was, doing that kind of like internal process of writing things, I was seeing things play out as an animation, and that I suppose is owing to having grown up on, Don Bluth movies and Looney Tunes and Disney films, and I would rewind them and watch them in slow motion with the VCR and things like that, and kind of wreck the tape. But I was pretty obsessed with animation as a kid, and I think that informed a lot of my drawing style and my approach to everything. And the reason I did it ultimately as a comic was because I had to do it by myself. It was kind of I was working in the game industry when I started working on the comic, and it was like a nighttime project, late hours, kind of into the wee hours of the morning sort of thing. So I knew it would be, a solo gig. And so I couldn't really conceive of a way to animate that all by myself, because I did want to tell a pretty broad scope story with a lot of character. You're animating, if you can maybe get like a minute or so done every couple months or something. So I felt like I had to approach it in a different way. So I said, okay, comics, that's how I'm going to tell the story. But I'd kind of always held out hope someday, somehow, maybe I'll be able to animate it. And then one day in, I think it was 2018 or early 2019, I saw Fable say something about looking for some animation work. And I had been traveling in the same circles as Fable for a long time. We both had a background on originally from DeviantArt, a different era of the internet, but a lot of artists would congregate there. And there were a lot of web comics and things that got their start there. I knew Fable had a background in comics, and I knew Fable had a background in animation. So I knew talking to them would be, probably they're the ideal person to reach out to, since they had both of those disciplines kind of under their belt. And I knew that also Fable was into the same kinds of animated movies as I was as a kid. I knew Fable was a fan of Don Bluth films and things too. So had a similar.
We're part of the similar zeitgeist basically of our era.
Yeah. So I reached out to Fable and said, hey, do you want to maybe put together a pitch packet for Lackadaisy, just to see if we could maybe get some animation done, or just try. Why not try, and Fable was like, hell yeah, I do. So we put together a pitch, and Fable showed it to some people who they have worked with in the past. And their advice to us was basically, this is nice and all, but, Hollywood studios are very risk averse. They aren't going to do something new and different like this, just with, unless you're a celebrity or a celebrity's kid or something like that, they're going to be like, yeah,
10 plus years of experience in the field doesn't matter.
Doesn't count for anything.
Are you some celebrity's kid?
Yeah.
And, so, if we can't sell it like that, we don't know how this is going to get picked up. And it's okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could get the funding myself then to, get a pilot done. And I remember I was at Titmouse and talking, and Pendleton Ward, who was my showrunner on Midnight Gospel, I was talking to him about it, and he was like, well, if you want to make a cartoon, make a cartoon. You don't need to ask anybody's permission for that. And I was like, all right. So
yeah. So I think we kind of both on some level wanted to do that anyway, and maybe we're just looking for the excuse to go do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We just needed the third piece of the machinery, which was Spike Trotman of Iron Circus Comics, because we were like, well, how are we going to fund this? Kickstarter, obviously, we go crowdfund it. And Spike has this background in just like running successful campaign after successful campaign for indie comics. And we were like, that's like the expertise we need. And Spike, as it turned out, also wanted to branch out into animation. So we were like, it was just like a, alignment of the stars. And we just got to work setting up a campaign in 2020 and launched it, unfortunately, right as COVID lockdown started.
Great timing. Just the best timing you could possibly make. Just like the moment the stock market crashes. It's like, all right, who wants to make a cartoon?
Right. It was like Kickstarter goes up, 48 hours past, first federal lockdown is initiated across the country, and we're like,
it was a great feeling. It was just the absolute best seeing the world collapse around you, just as you're like, hey guys, you want to make a cartoon
it's like,
about running cats?
Everybody on social media is talking about how their life has just been upended by, like this. And we're like, hey, we're running a Kickstarter about like gangster cats. You want them to help us make a cartoon? So yeah, it was a little weird timing, but it worked out in the end. I think maybe people needed something fun to distract them from all the bad news. So so we reached our goal pretty immediately and then like exceeded that by a lot, which was wonderful. And so we got pretty ambitious with the pilot. We were originally just going to do like an 11 to 15 minute thing. It turned into nearly a half hour of animation.
It's like when you get funded like how many times over original amount, it's like you can't just like deliver to people like, here's 8 minutes, It's like, okay, well, we had originally like written up a script. We were like, well, if everything gets funded and then some, then maybe we can explore the rest of the script. And then it then summed a lot, and we were like, oh, I guess let's make the entire script then. And well, that's how you get like this like breathless, like just extended action sequence where we're just like throwing everything out there. It's like, here it is, the Lackadaisy buffet, everything you could expect, here it is. So yeah, we got ambitious, and I think it paid off. People seem to really be enjoying it. So but it was 3 years of very hard work and doing it in an environment that was made difficult by the ongoing pandemic situation and things. But I'm kind of glad we had that kind of a artist oasis. We had a virtual studio through which we did it. So everybody worked remotely. But we had this Discord server that was is our work server. And we, congregated and kept each other sane throughout the whole thing. So yeah.
Excellent.
That's how that happened.
Yeah, there was that many a session of midnight lack of therapy as we were all just trying to like survive through these trying times. I remember in January of 2020, I remember tweeting, I was like, hey, it's the screaming 20s, guys.
Yes.
And then that was real, and I was like, I hate being a Cassandra.
There was the 20s that roared, and then the 20s that are screaming. So yes, we are living through the screaming
cat
20s.
Noises.
Yeah.
For me, what really like made that real was when I just saw bands just kind of like dropping like flies. It's like, okay, we had this big tour plan, cancel. We were doing a CD release show, cancel. This big festival, canceled. I thought, oh, okay, so this is like really, really happening now.
Yep. All those big conventions and things too that we otherwise would be going to. Yeah.
E3,
and like
rest in peace.
E3, rip.
But it was especially difficult because it's like just like listening to everybody talk about their experiences and just like how much they were going through, and like family members like getting sick or passing away, or they're having to take care of them, and like just really trying to like hold everything together and like keep people like hoping for something better in the future. So it's like all I can provide is this silly little cartoon about booze cats. Does this help? And just trying to do something to just alleviate the stress around everybody. And I think I don't like to think about what my life would have been like if I hadn't been doing this, because like 2020, knowing just how I was feeling like before that and before getting on this project like that, that would have been like a whole other layer of hell. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we could probably just like talk forever about all those like pandemic impacts and so forth. One thing I was curious though, did this really change how you made this, or was it always going to be done remotely through the Discord servers? We had planned on doing it remotely from the outset, but
like certainly the fact that the pandemic happened, like, cemented that in stone, that there was really going to not be any like, in-person collaboration. And that even the voice recording would have to be done remotely. Like we wouldn't be able to meet up in a studio or anything. So we relied on the voice cast to have the equipment needed to actually record things properly. So we'd have to we'd get into a voice chat and Discord together and talk about how we were, how direct the voice cast and how, this line was supposed to be read and that line. And we got all the cats together, which was great. So it was almost like we had the ensemble cast there to bounce off of each other, so they could chat with each other in the Discord chat, but then they would also be recording themselves on their equipment. So they would have to then send all of their audio to us. Of course, because the recording in Discord is not quality enough for film or anything. But yeah, so we just made it work. And we actually ended up in Forbes accidentally as an example of how virtual studios are the wave of the future, especially during this, these trying times. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, no pressure, I guess. Forbes is
I
highlighting
remember
us.
that article came out, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was like that Squidward meme where he goes, future, and that was me on the couch after that came out. I was like, I never intended that to be how this got framed, but it did.
I would argue we met the expectation that was
I think
set.
so. I think
I
think
hope
we
so.
successfully
I hope we exceeded it. Yeah.
We
But the
successfully
pressure, oh
did
my
a
God.
virtual studio thing. So
Yeah.
I would definitely say so. I mean, you managed to take this situation and just kind of roll with it, and now you have this, as you mentioned, just massively fully funded feature film. One thing I was also curious about when you mentioned that you were able to not only do a longer film, did the extra funding allow you to try some different things that ordinarily you say, well, it's kind of outside of our budget?
Yeah, we were able to get some custom music written for us. I mean, it allowed us to
more minutes of animation.
I mean,
upping
each
the
minute
pay
of animation
rate.
is very expensive, and so we cranked up the pay rate, and we were able to have the hands on deck that we needed to get it done. Of course, going ahead in the future, we need more and better funding to really make it a lasting thing. But
yeah, this production, a lot of it was just the goodwill of a lot of people. Everybody got paid. We insisted, even when people were like, "Oh, I could do it for free." It's no, you're getting money.
Yeah, no, everybody got paid. That was the rule.
Yeah.
But the 300
hard rule, no free work. But even so, it's a lot of these folks, they're so good, they deserve so much more. And and part of my goal in this is to make something that is stand out enough that I can deliver that back to them. It's all that effort meant something. So
so if we can come back to them and be like, hey, we have a job offer for you on a full series version of this, that's our dream. So
there's no short without the crew. They made it,
absolutely. And there was definitely a lot of people who joined up because they wanted to be involved in something that was a passion project. But we don't want to take advantage of anybody's, goodwill in that way, especially on a long-term basis. So, we raised $330K in the Kickstarter, but by animation standards, that is actually a pretty shoestring budget. And it sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it's also, when you look at actual production costs on, things that are streaming on network television and things like that, or streaming on networks and on network television, they cost a lot more than that to do.
Yeah,
so.
the number of hats I had to wear just to save the money for the production and my own fee, trying to keep it as low as possible while surviving in Los Angeles, just so that we could get those rates up to something that was still I was I wish I could pay more, but at least it was enough that it could cover some things for somebody's cost, and they could do it on the weekends. So just trying to find ways to have things be flexible, and always being there for the crew if they needed questions, and being very hands-on with anything I was asking of people, and helping with problem solving a lot as well.
Yeah, we did additional crowdfunding as well. Well, fundraising basically as well. Along the way, we made different merch items basically, and then did pre-order sales for those to kind of keep the cash flow positive and make ssure we could get everybody paid and that we could also do everything that we wanted to do and not have to really compromise very hard on we needed a end credit sequence, we needed another song at the end, as it turned out. And so we were like, we'll find a way to pay for these. So we did,
like having to bring on like additional sound people in the end, because like our sound person did a fantastic job, but like it was just too much. Like originally, since we had thought, this is going to be 15 minutes, and they said, that's sure, that's fine. And the amount of time that we thought it would take, it was like, now it's 27 minutes long. So like, can Am handle all this? And they kept saying like, I got it. But you could hear in their voice
the fatigue,
and like we ourselves were very fatigued. Like,
so we're like,
in particular, we're like, no, we're getting help for you. I reach out to my buddy who I know has like a lot of sound experience, works on a number of productions, indie and otherwise. So I reached out to my buddy Kennedy and brought him on as a sound supervisor, and he brought with him like a bunch of assistant sound editors to help out Am, so that Am was able to like put all of themselves into it and like make it really shine instead of like trying to just rush to get everything done, so that so that the sound like really had like that special unique quality. Because my opinion is that this is an audio visual medium, and so you need to pay attention to sound unless you're just going for a totally silent thing in the first place. It's a fundamental component. And I'm sure you as a radio guy know it's like you pay attention to sound.
Oh yeah, every single time. I actually like while I'm looking at you and looking at my questions, I'm also kind of eyeing like the levels here, making sure that that you're coming through and that I'm coming through. It's a nice, wonderful thing.
There's
to do.
so many technical details that goes into any medium that like the average person just enjoying the thing doesn't know about, just to make it feel more seamless. Like making sure that there's not a hitch in the sound where like suddenly it goes, at least.
Yeah, or it doesn't peak at some point or something like that. Yeah, like all of that stuff.
Or that,
and
like,
also that it has all the layering you really have to do to get the audio to sound right, like the gunfire and things like that. Like you can just insert a gunfire noise like a stock one, but it doesn't sound quite right. It doesn't have enough richness to it, and so you have to come in and like layer other sounds on top of it. And that was stuff that we learned along the way, because I'm not an audio person at all. Like all of my art knowledge is visual arts, so it was like really interesting to have those people come in and like really take the reins on that and be like, here's what I suggest for this and that. And Fable are like, yeah, that's great. That's perfect. So I got an education in that sort of aspect of things.
And I think especially with the minutia of the sound, like you mentioned the gunfire. Okay, but not every gun sounds the same.
We were pretty strict about that one. But like part of the ongoing joke during production was, the gun nerds are going to chase after us for this one.
Yep. Yep.
They actually have come to our defense. We figured they'd be criticizing us, but they actually came to our defense numerous times.
Yeah, it's like, Tracy, you've said repeatedly that it's like the gun nerds, they'll come down on Lackadaisy anytime like a cat's hand is on the gun wrong or like something slightly off.
Right. Well, I get people come at you and go, oh, well, they don't have any trigger discipline. It's like, no, they don't, because they're gangsters. They don't have
deliberate.
Any education and like but there's a lot of nerds out there, a lot of history nerds, and we deeply appreciate them and their interest in this sort of thing, but they also will let you know when you have done done something wrong. So
it's like, this is my specialty and you will know every single thing. But we were very impressed actually at the number of nerds who were like, they're really into the history of the thing, and like, so when there's people who pop up and they'll say, oh, why does Seraphine's shotgun, like, why is it an automatic weapon? Oh my god, that's so unrealistic.
It's not a shotgun.
I can't believe that. And then like they just get flooded by these like gun history nerds who's like, you idiot, you fool, you simpleton, that is a Browning automatic rifle and it can do automatic fire, in fact, and also
it's in the name. It's automatic.
Bonnie and Clyde's gun. What is wrong with you? And it's amazing just seeing these people like kind of like light up, and it's just like history lesson time that they
I'm
might
not
not
used
otherwise
to, like,
get to.
I'm used to having to defend all my own decisions. Like people will question my decision making pretty frequently on the comic and stuff. Like a lot of times it's just curiosity, but a lot of times they will challenge you, and you better have an answer. but I'm not used to like having all this commentary and then other people coming in and answering before I even get to, like, I don't have to defend myself. Like, I'm like, you got this. All right. Yeah. I don't have to describe why, this gun behaves that way. And no, actually the M1911 like looks kind of like a modern weapon, I guess, to some people, but M1911, it was invented in the early 20th century. So,
there's a lot of attention, like besides the guns, like there's a lot of attention paid to like all kinds of details in there. Like,
the
really
vehicles,
try to avoid anachronisms, except for anachronistic, the graveyard
right
in there.
The one joke on that grave that people thought was a mistake, but
bless you, one commenter who thought that that was a typo. Bless you. That's so cute.
But speaking of those models and everything, Newt here is the person who modeled all of those props, made the 3D models for those, and did a lot of research himself, especially on the vehicles. Like you had GM Heritage Society, was it, that
the
provided...
GMC Heritage Foundation, the General Motor Corporation sort of archival group, which is a subset of the official General Motor Corporation, but they maintain an enormous database of all of the historical manufacturing documentation for any vehicle ever made under their purview. So I was able to get all of the technical schematics for the Cadillac, all of the design and frame specifications and everything like that to make it as accurate as I could.
The 3D pipeline was honestly like a huge backbone to the production, because I was able to, like, thanks to Newt, who just like, God, how much more Blender did you pick up during production? It was crazy how much you were doing. In 2019, Blender, which is a free 3D software program, had like a total overhaul of their UI, and it became much, much stronger. And I got very interested in going, like, I think there might be some ways that this could be integrated into future pipelines for 2D in particular, because I was aware of the history of animation and early 3D, how that was used, like, as far back as Great Mouse Detective, but also like how models were used on productions like, say, Bambi, where those antlers are actually physical models. They're traced models.
They'd make a sculpture of the deer model, and the way that they got, Bambi's father to turn his head and things like that, they were, because that's a very difficult three-dimensional object to rotate in 3D space and translate to 2 dimensions and
even
do it consistently.
One animator could do it, not everybody could, and so it would be too difficult. Just to keep it consistent, like they built actual models. Cruella de Vil's car, which if you notice, if you watch the animation, you might see something of a send up to that in there. Like researching this stuff, Cruella de Vil's car is also a model, actually. So there's a lot of like things in animation where every time there's like a new piece of technology that we can apply to art, like we're like, hey, how can I use this? And you just get like interesting productions out of it. I mean, that's one reason why CG like fascinated people. It's just like, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, but you can look back at like the history of animation and see like Fable was talking about 101 Dalmatians and the way that they drew that. I think it was a Duesenberg car that Cruella de Vil drove. They had a model and they just traced it. Basically, it was a sort of rotoscoping of a car model, and that's because doing those hard-edged sort of props and things in animation becomes extremely difficult to do because of the changing perspective on everything. And so that was that, there is
it's like, what do you want to spend your time on? Do you want to spend time on like the hundreds of dogs or the car? One of these things like needs more attention, and it's the acting. The acting is what matters. So because of that, like I wanted to make use of this technology and, the ability to like model like cars and guns and shovels and a fiddle in 3D meant that the animators didn't have to worry about like keeping all of that in my like perspective. And then, roughly 80% of my notes would have been fix the gun, fix the car, fix the fiddle. It's like, that's a waste of time that could be better spent just focusing on character animation, which is what I wanted them to focus on. It was going to be demanding enough. And then in addition to that, we also built 3D environments so that it was easier to board for this, so that as a board artist, like we are often actually cinematographers. And I say we because most of my career has been as a board artist on several animated productions. And you're effectively a cinematographer, but there's no set except for some images that are given to you, which you may or may not be able to use. You have to draw it yourself. And you spend a lot of time recreating, like thinking about like how you move through that space, and you still want to like think about that and like imagine it in your head even before you go out and do anything. But without like the ability to just go out with a camera, it can be very, very difficult to like experiment a ton for like the best possible angle or like placement, and because it's just so much extra effort. So bless my board artists on this, like Ashley Green, Kelly Turnbull, and
Kevin Slowinski.
Kevin Slowinski, for when I said, hey, here's a Blender model of the set. Now learn Blender and stick a camera around and see if that helps you out. And they're just like, that might sound maybe silly now because like Blender is like just everywhere now, thanks to that 2019 update. But it was only just kind of becoming part of some productions as a tool in general. So like Newt had to sit there and like teach all of us, like myself included, like more the details of Blender, and I had to get a lot more familiar with 3D software in order to like take advantage of being able to basically walk through these rough spaces. And meanwhile, while we were walking through these rough proxy spaces for like what the set would look like, Newt was creating more refined sets that then we would be able to match the work in the boards to the sets that he created, like basically 1-to-1, or at least like close to that. And that way, while boards were being done, and like certain parts of it getting finished or like animatics built, we were able to like work on background work that might also be taking up a lot of the background artist's time. So it's like, it's, we wanted to make sure that these backgrounds like felt still hand painted. So they are actually. The artists would take 3D renders that Newt provided, which might have some indications of like lighting and shading, and more importantly, texture, and said, okay, take this and like give it some actual atmosphere, like putting those hand painted characteristics back in. So it didn't have that like that glossy, overly crisp look that 3D can have, especially when we don't have any advanced shaders on hand. Like this, everything was vanilla, everything. There was nothing special done. Like Newt created special shaders to make the guns and the objects in the car like integrate with the characters somewhat good, following sort of what's looked good in the Xerox era, like 3D models, but also close to what Tracy had been able to accomplish in the comic. But the same couldn't be done for the backgrounds necessarily, at least up to a point. So being able to get the human hand back into that was very important to make it feel good, especially in the Lackadaisy, where itself, that speakeasy, where it just like the ambiance can't be expressed fully in the 3D model, even though Newt did an amazing job with the 3D model of that. Like that is a really glorious set, Newt, and I really hope we can like get that uploaded to like VR chat or something in the future so people could actually walk around it. But yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome to be able to like give this new tool to the board artists and be like, go be a cinematographer and worry more again about the acting and like the storytelling you're doing and less about drawing background details as much as possible. And that also allowed us to like, it basically created like this whole kind of half layout step basically that meant that different parts of production could work simultaneous to each other instead of waiting for another piece to like slot in before somebody could move forward. And yeah, it was just like very careful balancing act of me in front of the train, putting down the train tracks like that Wallace and Gromit cartoon as it was coming down. But there was a lot of thought in how those rails would go and how it would weave around. I'm full of analogies, by the way, so feel free to stop me if it's getting a little
I get it.
off track.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I did not
I see what
mean
you did
that.
there.
I'm sorry.
Wah, wah. It's a comedy show now. All right, Zach, I'm going to turn the mic over to you now, sir, because I want to hear a bit about your role. As we mentioned, of course, you were like modeling everything that we were seeing in this thing. Was this your first time working on a production of this kind of scale?
Very much so. I went to school for design engineering. In my day role outside of animation, I am a mechanical design engineer in the industrial sector. But soon as I graduated, COVID happened. I got furloughed. I was suddenly unemployed. and I was friends with Tracy and Fable, and they reached out and they were like, "Hey, we know you like to 3D model. We're thinking about integrating it into the pipeline in this way. Do you think this would be up your alley?" I was like, "I'll give it a shot."
Yeah, it took off from there.
Yep, first crash course was, okay, we need board-ready copies of the cars in like 72 hours. Can you do it?
Oh my god, I can't believe I asked you to do that. I don't think I would never give that kind of deadline now that I know a lot better about like that's like hey expectations, a little bit more time.
Hey, I had you 2 cars in 72 hours and a steamboat the day after.
You certainly did. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
But,
I just want to quickly jump in here. Doing 2 cars and a steamboat in 72 hours, is that like a real like Herculean effort in that industry?
It depends on the detail level you're going for.
Gotcha.
Like if you're doing like, low res game art, or, like I've worked on mobile games and things in the past, you could just make a box, like a cube and some, cylinders for wheels and things and put a pretty low res texture on it. But in this case, we needed a lot of detail. And he actually, basically recreated the actual car model from the schematics that we'd been given from GMC. One of the cars was based on a Cadillac Series 314A from 1927, and the other one was based on the 1928 Model A Ford.
I'm glad you remember the Cadillac, because I did not.
Yeah, and it's because people have been asking me after the fact, and I was like, I went back and looked at all the reference that we had pulled up for, the photo reference we had pulled up for it. I was like, okay, yeah, I've just had to double check and make sure. I knew it was like 314 series Cadillac, but yeah, that was the specific one that we relied on for that particular model. And
gorgeous car. Like, no wonder Seraphine is so freaking pissed when it gets popped.
In fact, there's actually amount of detail in those car models that is a bit betrayed by the fact that we have a shader on there that gives it kind of a slightly cartoony, like cell shaded look, so it doesn't look too disparate from the characters as it's animated. But you modeled in all kinds of detail on those things, like and then
all of their dash hardware and gear shift and transmission. The 4-door had a fully realized. Well, you see the 4-door engine.
It had an engine. It actually had an engine.
It has a fully realized engine and driveline. Various other little bits and bobs and details.
Yeah. That turned out to be very useful, especially for backgrounders. Was like, hey, so now you have to paint a 4-door engine, and it's like, what? And it's like, it's okay. Here's a 3D render. Just like make that look nice. This is like, oh, thank God, because that would have otherwise taken way longer. Anything we were asking them to do, especially with like these things that are like not from our time period. So sorry about my birds.
It's okay. It's not coming through too badly.
No,
yeah,
it's cool. Real quiet.
It's ambiance.
The ambiance. I provide it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but there were a lot of things that just ended up being like, because it's such a, like the suicide doors on the on those old cars was kind of a thing. We actually had to go back and redraw some boards because we realized we forgot to explain to the board artists how these doors work, that they open this way and not like like that. So
do a lot of hurried revision to make it like a period accurate again,
explain like the guns and the proper hand positions and things like that for those and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's a bit tricky doing that, and thinking back, we probably should have thought of that at a time and made guides and moving forward we will do that.
That's like the things that I want to update. It's like more guides on this or more guides on that. It's funny once you're like the way that you work when you're alone. It works for you, and a lot of things you might think, oh, this is obvious, and maybe you have a friend that also thinks the thing's obvious. But once you're working with like 5, 10, 20, 100 people who all have to like get it in the same way, you start to realize that there's like so much variation in how people will perceive the information that you deliver to them, that you now have to like make sure that any information that you deliver is presented in a variety of ways so that you can make sure everyone's on the same page. And some people will have like strengths or weaknesses here or there, but it's still up to you as like the conductor of this like chaos symphony that you educate everybody on stuff. Like you team as best you can, because you might find that amongst those folks, somebody actually is like amazing at something if only you gave them the time to learn in the proper materials. So
in the future, kickoff meetings will follow with a brief history lesson.
Really.
Yeah,
kind of do need to do that.
That was pretty much any time I asked you one question about like stuff that happened back when. Like, I remember I was doing this little like doodle thing, and I was like, "Hey Tracy, what was trash?
Yeah, what
like
did trash cans look like? Did they have trash pickup service? Like, what? They didn't have trash bags in the sense that we have them now. So,
yeah, it's like there's no trash bags. Like, are there even dumpsters? Are there trash cans? What kind of things would they even throw out? You know, there's no like plastic refuse that you gotta trash. So yeah, it's like everything is a rabbit hole. Everything's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a continuation of all the stuff for the comic that would just repeatedly come up. It's like you can really, go out and buy books and watch documentaries and really try to get a, broad scope picture of what this, decade, this era was like. But then when it comes down to actually like, choreographing characters doing specific things within a scene, and you start running into all these different things like, well, this character needs to make a telephone call, but how did that actually look and work in that time period? And you have to like go look that up.
At the bottom of one of those phones, how does it sound when it like hits a piece of wood?
Yeah,
and like
making any kind of long distance call, and long distance was much shorter back then than it is now because they had different telephone exchanges all over the place. It was a lot more complicated. You had to go through a lot more steps and talk to operators and things to actually get through. And phone numbers were a lot shorter, and and they had only just started introducing phone numbers. Like before that, you would always just call the operator first. And
everything to do with the physics of the car. Also having to explain to the animators like, no, the car can't do that. I know that's a mild exaggeration off of like a modern car, but the car can't do that. It would just shatter into a million pieces, you feel so bad as like to tell animators like, no, make it less animated, and it's just
animators
sadness. It's like,
it turns out,
sorry, it's so good. The kicking, flipping car, it's so good.
Animators love to animate, and so they will anything that you give them will make it a cartoon, right? So, but we had to be like, okay, this is a cartoon, but we've got to ground it a little bit more in reality. So we had to like, rein it in a little.
Our team is like a sled. Like the moment you let go of the brake, they're just right off. So
I won't get too much into the weeds with it, but I remember, Tracy, one of my favorite stories from going down historical rabbit holes for the sake of accuracy. Industrial floodlights for the quarry.
That was hard.
Like 3 days of research trying to find what
it was impossible.
Floodlights.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that people are interested in, and you can go kind of like wander into their domain on the internet. Like there are people who collect old phones and old phone booths we found, and so we were able to find good reference for that sort of stuff. Radios and stuff like that. People are into old radios, and so you can find that information, but there's like specific things that there just isn't really any documentation for. Nobody photographs it. Nobody writes about it because it's not interesting to anyone. And that is things like, what would the lighting look like in a quarry site, like this or something. And we had to go look up like stadium lighting from that period in time. So like if you had like, a high school football game going on or something like that, like how did they light that? And did they do that? And it turns out they did. And they were introducing, large floodlights and things at that time. It was mostly for sporting events. But we had to go look that up to figure out, like, how do we light this quarry area with something that looks, like it belongs in that time and place and doesn't look too modern and things like that. So, it's tricky to do historical fiction.
You have to be really into research, like really into research to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a big part of the job is going out and finding that information. And I enjoy that sort of detective work, but I think for some people it might be just like really annoying, and they're like, I just want to make shit up. Like, I'm sorry, I mean this curse, but like they just want to make things up and like invent things. And, so it's like
curse.
Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. See what the fuck you want. Totally cool.
Yeah.
I can only imagine because in speaking to like other writers, I know that the research is like the best/worst part because it's just this endless rabbit hole that you go down and you never come up for like weeks, if not months. That being the case, was it hard to walk away and say, okay, this is done? We're not going to do it.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
you can always spend more time on it and get more accurate and like, you know, make sure, you know, double and triple check your sources and things like that. But at a certain point you have to draw a line and go, okay, like we have a deadline, we have to get this done. We only have so much budget that we, you know, we have money, a limited amount of money we can spend doing this. Spike is going to want us to release a film at some point. So we have to, like, you know, draw the line and go like, okay, this is it. We found the thing we're going to use. Let's go with that. And you go ahead and make the model for it based
it's
on
like
these
if it's off by like a year or two, it's fine. You know, we're just trying to avoid things that were like, you know, very
really, that would really take you out of it.
not,
Yeah.
All right, so back on. Go a little sideways and talk about the voice actors, because the voice cast for this thing were absolutely phenomenal. Amazing group of talent and a real diversity of sounds, too. How'd you meet these folks? How'd you know that they were the right ones for the job?
So I think the first person we reached out to was Michael Kovac, and the reason we found him was because Fable had worked on a production for which he had done some voice acting, and they had a premiere at a small theater, like a private premiere for that, and Fable and Michael were both there, and Fable just kind of like, Fable, you tell the story. You were the one who actually approached him.
I tugged on his shirt. I was like, hey, so I have this thing going on where I need like this fast talking asshole, basically. Would you be interested in trying out? It's like, and I can't talk about it here right now because it's very like hush hush at the moment because this was pre Kickstarter release. But would you be open to this? It's for a thing called Lackadaisy, if you've heard of it. And he's like, no, I haven't, but I'll look into that. You know, sure, I'll get back in touch with you. And he mentioned it to his partner, Ashley Nichols, and Ashley was like, do it. I will break out with you. Do it. so yeah, he got back in touch with us, and we talked a bit about you know, what kind of voice we were imagining for Rocky, and we wanted to make sure that like it's like he's very skilled, like he can do like a huge range of voices. Anybody who knows Michael Kovac's work can speak to that. But I wanted it to be as close to like his natural tone as possible, so there was just that much less thought. So just guiding him to like something that was similar to his own voice, but just like a little bit more weathered, basically, as like a guy who'd been
itinerant
on the train tracks.
Yeah.
I keep going back to trains. Jesus. Sorry. But then
you got a train of thought on some.
Let's not derail. Let's get back.
Oh my god. Oh god. Okay, I quit.
I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Yeah, I am.
Sorry, I don't have any kids. I can't make dad humor. I don't want to be a faux pas.
Oh my god. Why?
Stop.
I'm stuck with this.
Please stop. Please. I think I'm like nominally in charge of this, so I'm going to request an immediate moratorium to the
You're
jab.
to be the subscribers.
Somebody has to be the pun police here.
I know, right? I gotta
you say you're wrangling cats.
Oh yeah. Michael like turned out to be like an amazing, like just like perfect for Rocky, and unfortunately maybe a little bit too perfect for Rocky. His personality is very similar, though thankfully he's like a lot more focused and professional.
He's not gotten into any kind of criminal trouble as far as we know, at least.
I don't think so, but like I haven't inquired too deeply.
Maybe
that we know about.
Voice actors I talked to them like, you are a little too close to your character, and I am deeply concerned.
Yeah, but we started out by having him record the poem from the very beginning, which is something that came directly from the comic, and we did a few test reads for that to try to nail down like what that would sound like, and he was just doing a great job with it, and we actually had to have him record it a couple of additional times before we ended up like settling on the exact version we wanted, because we knew going in that, you know, poetry at the start of a gangster flick, an animated one at that, was a bit of a hard sell. So a bit odd.
It starts off in a very weird way, but it was also kind of the challenge to the audience. Is like, okay, if you can put up with this, you will probably love the rest of it. Probably.
I hope so. Yeah. It doesn't seem to have scared off too many people, although we did hear a few, you know, gripes about why is there a poem? The poem is too long. What is this poem? So yeah,
that's what the pretty colors are for. It's like, if you don't like the poem, look at the beautiful colors, look at the pretty kitty.
Yeah, not everyone's a fan of poetry. We get that. But yeah, no, Mike did a great job, and he was just fantastic at that maniacal laughter too. So so then we started. So he actually got us in touch with some additional voice cast who then reached out to us with their demo reels and audition tapes and things. And
because it turns out that voice actors know other voice actors. So when you say, "Hey, I'm looking out for more people, and I got to put out a cold call," can you let some of your buddies know that actually this is for serious? Because again, before like Kickstarter release, I couldn't talk about it publicly, and yet my best way of networking with people was like through like my social media accounts. So how do I reach out to folks? Because again, like I might be like in animation, but like I'm not as hooked into the voice acting community as a voice actor would be. So by talking to Mike and him like reaching out to buddies, he was able to, you know, like kind of put out the word for some just amazingly talented people to like try out, and we just found some just really, really cool actors, like really cool people. And then Sung-Won Cho, the voice of Mordecai, was the second person that I contacted. And his story is kind of interesting because well before he was ever like the pro ZD, I guess as the internet regards him, he actually started off on the internet just doing Lackadaisy dubs. Like he would just as a fan, he just wanted to do. He's like, hey, I love this comic, and I want to start learning how to voice act. So I figured I'll record myself like playing these different characters, and I'll put it up online. And Tracy saw it years ago, so like that's how we started off. So when we were talking about like, okay, like who do we cast for these, and I was like, well, knowing Mike's performance in the other production that we were on together, I was like, I really liked how he was able to like embed a little subtlety into a character that was otherwise like so super bombastic, and I thought that might translate well into Rocky, and also just the ability to talk a lot really quickly without like losing track of what he was saying. But I had an idea that maybe he might work out for Rocky. But I couldn't think in my head, like, who would work out for Mordecai. And I said to Tracy, like, well, how do you imagine Mordecai sounding? And she was like, there is this guy, he goes by ProZD online, and he did these dubs, like, years ago. And I always thought, like, you say it, Tracy, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I kind of always, like, thought, well, that is basically canonical Mordecai in my head. Like, at this point, he just did such a good job of nailing Mordecai. A lot of other people would do voices for him and give him a British accent or things like that. And I was just like, no, I mean, I can see why people like interpret him that way, and that's totally fine and valid. But Sung-Won just seemed to like really get that wasn't quite his deal. He's just very like it's an affectation of his, and he's monotone and deadpan in a very deliberate, like I'm very serious kind of way. And so it wasn't like poshness that he was giving off. It was more like, seriousness, and that he really wanted to convey, even though, a lot of the time he's losing his cool. And
yeah, I like his performance. Like he's really good at like, I'm serious. I'm a very serious guy. I'm serious, I say.
Yeah, he's
like that edge.
Not everyone around him is convinced. Yeah. Like his colleagues know that they can push his buttons and get a reaction out of him. But yeah, so I said that to Fable, thinking there's no way we're gonna be able to get Pro ZD at this point. Like Sung-Won is a big deal. He's doing voices and like everything. He's like doing God of War and things like that.
But I didn't know that. So
Fable just ran off and contacted him and was like, hey, you want to do this thing? This isn't a scam.
I remember the email was like, hi, this is not a scam. Anyway. And I proceeded to explain.
Much to our great blessing and luck, he agreed to do it, and he was like, yeah, I'm down for that. And he was just great to work with, and brought his voice that he had been doing for Mordecai to it, and we barely had to give him any direction at all because he kind of had already nailed it. So yeah.
He's like, what kind of voice do you want me to do? It's like, the one that you did 7 years ago was pretty good. And I remember I was listening to the dubs when you mentioned it, Tracy, and I was just like, oh, these were 7 years ago? I bet he's even better now. Yeah. And I think I remember you were warning, like, oh, he's like, he's probably really busy. And I'm like, nah, you'd be surprised by people. I'll just like email him. You'll see what happens. But he was really good. Real pleasure to work with. I mean, all of them are a pleasure to work with.
Yeah, they were all fabulous. For some of them, we had to listen to lots and lots of audition tapes to really find the right person. And for some of them, it was like, oh, that's it. That's the person. Like, it really wasn't a matter of, we got so many like demo, like as when we did a casting call, because a lot of the people we cast before we even did any kind of casting call, because Mike had let his voice actor friends know that we were hiring. But then once we did start doing public calls for people to submit their reels, we got flooded with things. There are a lot of really talented people out there, and a lot of them, a lot of people looking to get into voice acting. And so, much of it was just like, it wasn't so much that somebody lacked the skill level we needed. It was just that they we would often pick people because it was like, oh, that's the character in my head. That sounds just like that. So
yeah, I would listen to these. I would listen to tryouts, and I would just try to picture the character, like saying those lines basically. And it's like, what did I picture? Like, what kind of like movement were they making at that time? Like, and based on like what I could picture, like how that voice would inspire performance. Since like, I have a lot of animation background specifically as well. I was just like, okay, this one feels like this would be like, there's something about this voice which like describes like some tension to it. In the case of Freckle, like this kind of like just, nervousness, but like this desire to bust out. Or like with Ivy, just like pure exuberance, just pure like just bounce and chipperness and just like excited to be there. Oh man, we had a good time like going through all those. Like finding Zib was a challenge. I remember looking through the list of people and be like, one of these guys is named Valentine Stokes. Can you imagine if we cast the guy named Valentine as Zib? And then it turns out he was the best guy for the job. So
yeah, we had been like, I think I gave Fable reference of young Tom Waits just doing an interview and being kind of squirrely about it, but also like in that very raspy voice of his. And we're like, that's kind of that sort of thing. And so, yeah, we found Valentine that way, and he was just great for that. But we had to listen to a lot of tapes before we, arrived at that one. And then Nico and Seraphine were also like we wanted a very specific, sort of dialect for them. And we wanted people who had a background from that, because we didn't want to have to explain to people how to do like
I didn't want to be the Louisiana Creole expert in the room, even though I got a family down in Louisiana. Like I'm from New Hampshire, but like my mother's from down there. I don't want to be in like, with something that's like so very specific cultural thing, like explaining to somebody, okay, like actually you're not supposed to pronounce it like that, or actually it would be like this affectation or that kind of thing. It's like to have it just like be something that they could pull from just out of like memory of family would just be so much stronger. So I was willing to just like leave open the roles until we found the right people, because it was really challenging when you put out a thing that says, hey, we're looking for people of like Creole, Cajun, Louisiana background, apply here and use voice like this.
And a lot of people will submit stuff that sounds like a Texas, twang
there are a lot of Applejacks
and
applying for Seraphine. Is what ended up happening. Yeah. And like maybe to the average person, they'd be like, well, it's the same thing. It's like, nah, like again, since I've, family down there, Louisiana Creole does not sound like Texan. It doesn't sound like Georgia. It doesn't sound like the Panhandle, these even within Louisiana itself, there's like a lot of regional differences to speech. So I just wanted to pull from something that was like that, because you never see it well represented. When it comes to like most people's idea of like what Cajun is Gambit from X-Men, which is never done right. Never done right at all.
What?
No, Gambit's never right.
Oh my God.
Is very not correct.
Fable, you are just destroying my. So you're telling me the Gambit.
Sorry. Look, he's very lovely, and I like the way he talks too. But it ain't Cajun.
So the Gambit from the 1990s X-Men was not accurate in the slightest, huh?
No. In fact, he's actually one of the worst. Very charming. Like the performance is fun, but not quite accurate.
Damn.
I wanted to like find somebody who knew that, and we managed to find Malcolm and Benny, who both have like background and like that describes their family. And even though neither of the families currently live in Louisiana, they were just like the instant they were talking to each other, they just clicked. You could believe they were brother and sister. And it was funny, like Benny was saying to Malcolm, it's like, in all honesty, she was like, in all possibility, like we might be like distant cousins or something, because it's like turns out that their families were from the exact same area of Louisiana. Yeah.
All
So, but yeah, they were, when they're pulling from their performance, like they're thinking of like family. Like Malcolm told me, is like he's specifically channeling his grandmother actually when he's playing Nico, which I thought was like really adorable. But yeah, like, oh my God, those two are just like have such charisma. They're so magnetic. And I was just so happy because Nicodeme and Seraphine are two of my favorite characters in Lackadaisy. And I really wanted them to come across as like, not just like, oh, here's the villains and they're just like sloppy or like floating around or whatever. It's like, nah, you are like, yeah, rooting for them to shoot these guys. It's like, yeah. I think Benny said like one of the lines when she was recording, because she would like just make some stuff up sometimes, and sometimes it was so good we're like, oh, we're throwing that in. Like 11 Kinds of Stupid is absolutely her.
Yeah, they did a lot of improv, and we just rewrote lines around them because they were just having so much fun. And
better,
they're funny, so.
they're better lines. And we invited them to also. It's like, hey, we threw something in here, but if you can think of something better, go for it. And that's what you can do when that is someone's background. You can say, what we have here, if you can think on an improvement and you think you know the character better, how this might flow, go for it. Like, we'll experiment. And just like it was just so good. Like, and they just all the cast members like just instantly got their characters. They just knew them. And so it took like practically no time at all for them to just like settle into those roles. And then when you put them together, like, oh man, it gets even better. Like getting them to record together in a voice call, even though it was like, there was a lot of like, again, bootstrapping with that, where you're just kind of like praying that everybody's sound environments were going to sound decent. And partially because of COVID, a lot of them had actually updated their at-home recording equipment to make at-home recording possible.
And they made booths and things, or they climbed into a closet to record in there because
in Mike's case, like he was under a bunch of blankets first, and then he was in a hot car with no AC, with a dying laptop, recording those maniacal screams in a garage. It's like all that whole climactic sequence is actually a second take on that, because he moved from an apartment to a house during that period. And I was like, hey, I want to see if we can do another take on the laughter bit, because I have an inkling that you might have actually been holding back when you were in the apartment, because one does not want to have the cops called on them. And now that everybody has seen like that Act 3 climax, you might understand why I was like, you might have the cops called on you if you were in an apartment making those noises.
Yeah, I can see that leading to some awkward situations.
Yeah. So, he was actually in a car when he was recording that. It was just amazing.
Damn.
But like huge credit to M, by the way, to making all that a technical possibility, because as best as any of them could record, there was just going to be differences. There just would be. We even had like a difficulty with Horatio, where we didn't realize that that Walter, the voice actor for Horatio, that his microphone was picking up like a lot of bouncing around from the room around him, because we didn't realize just how much Discord was actually cutting out a bunch of noise. So thankfully, though, Horatio is in a cave. So a slight cavey sound is fine. So, but yeah, Em actually managed to make a lot work, like really, really making it like come as close to possible as, uniform as we could do. Maybe not entirely, but you have to be pretty good to spot it. So I would say like fucking, A+ work, man.
Absolutely. So, the voice work was so on point. I mean, like, especially I think Mordecai, this is exactly how I thought he would sound in real life. When he started talking, I was like, boom, it's exactly what I was thinking. Absolutely. I also want to ask about music, because the music in this thing was so damn good. I just love that.
Thanks.
I just love that particular style of music. And the group behind this is Sepia Tonic.
The song Olive Branch that you hear during the car chase scene is them. And we had them record that for us specifically, and they made modifications as we requested them. Like all the violin was something that we requested be added in, because we really wanted that thematic thing to carry on throughout the whole pilot, because Rocky opens with the violin. We had requested things like they had a siren sound in there initially, and we're like, can we make that an analog sound instead, because it sounds a little too modern.
Something that sounds like it's from the 1920s, like playing around with like crunch and scratch and grind.
and they dropped this. They had this like beat drop in there that we're just like, oh, that's perfect for this thing.
Oh
that
yeah,
happened
it's like, oh yeah, dubstep step and my electro swing historical cat cartoon. I fucking love it.
We knew there'd be some jazz purists who would not be thrilled with us doing this, but we were like, we do have to make this for a modern audience, and we do really like the sound of this.
We thought it was sick as fuck, so
yeah, it was cool. So we were like, yeah, we're gonna play a little fast and loose with 1920s music, and but toward the end we reincorporated a little bit more of that, but and also played, has a modern angle to it as well. But 1920s music is a little bit of tough sell for a modern audience, but it's not from a lack of love for it. And we didn't include stuff that's like just really genuinely recorded at that point in time.
Yeah, the music that you hear is actually largely kind of like, in a sense, like what inspired Lackadaisy, because you, Tracy, had actually gotten really into electro swing and stuff, like more than just a.
Well, yeah, as I was doing, I mean, when I was developing the comic, I was listening to a lot of like Squirrel Nut Zippers and Pair of Stellar and things like that, and then Caravan Palace came out, and people were always linking me to Caravan Palace songs. I'm like, oh, these are really cool. I love
the Furry Vines video. Like Lone Digger is just like wonderfully done. I love
that. Yeah, and
that music video goes places.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, we felt that like, we really love that. It's catchy. We were listening to a lot of it while we were working, and it just felt like the right thing for this, this pilot. And we also actually found the violinist for Rocky through Sepiatonic. They were using somebody named Fabrice Yu, and that's who they brought in to add the violin when we asked them to. And he's got this kind of like jazz funk style, like punk style sort of thing that.
It's like what does jazz folk violin sound like? And it's like that's Fabrice you basically.
It's like
we were so impressed by this performance that I reached out to Anthony Mead, the guy, one of the guys behind Sepiatonic, and I was like, hey, who's the fiddler? Can I get in touch with them? And he was like, sure, and gave me Fabrice's information, and we started chatting him up, and he became our go-to violin guy. And just like the whole beginning bit with the poetry, we recorded him live improving that. He's actually improving over Mike's actual lines, and just like coming up with stuff like,
right.
Like 3 or 4.
Well, he would give us like, he would like give us 3 or 4 different versions of each for each stanza that Rocky recites. He would give us a bunch of things to work with, and then Fable later stitched them together, and then they handed it to M to like fully integrate. But yeah, he was great, and we recorded his actual playing while he was doing that, so we could give it to the animators as reference, so that his finger motion and the bow and everything were kind of matching up to actually what violin playing looks like, because as you know, in a lot of cartoons, probably like they just kind of fake it. They don't really, but we wanted to be a little more authentic than that. So we made sure we had some good reference material for the animators, and Fabrice was just fantastic in letting us.
Yeah, it was just like that's how I imagine Rocky playing violin, like just to a T. So he did a great job. Very patient guy, also, because we were asking him to do things that he wasn't entirely used to.
Yeah, it was definitely out of his comfort zone to be on Discord and recording himself and on a webcam and stuff. But he toughed it out with us, and that was great because we got some really good material out of it, I feel. But then,
came back to us for the climax, where I was like, "Hey, I asked M, could we have like a little bit of violin in here, just to like amp up the drama that is this?" So like we're back in Rocky's headspace basically, which like initiates the oh shit, here comes the violin, it's time for dread, and it needed something. It was missing something without like some kind of like upsetting noise. So as all the sound work that M had done was just like fantastic, but there was just something missing. And so I remember describing to M, it's like that. It's like, so what I'm imagining with the violin is like, and I'm like, does that make sense? And I'm like, yeah, I think I get it. I just like came back with just like with this spine for this like musical sequence that we ended up calling like the Sudden Circus. That is just fantastic. And yeah, just like using like the just playing around and like composing something that then Fabrice could use and just like quickly like do his pass on it and like his interpretations of that. And that was one of the benefits of having M on board, because M actually has a background as a composer and as well as a musician. So I think this was M's like first major sound design thing. I think they had done some video game work and stuff before, and they had been pointed to me by this other music person I follow online called TVMA Noise, who's also very skilled. And I had reached out and was like, hey, I'm looking for a sound person. Are you, or do you know anybody who would be available? I need someone who can do this, this, and this. And the ability to like potentially come up with music was one of the things I wanted, because I felt like somebody who understood music might bring an interesting quality to the sound design that people don't normally expect. As like just that interest in not just noise, but also no sound whatsoever. And when you choose to put that in, which is a big thing when you're making music, is when not to play the note. So,
All right. Well, folks, we are about to wrap this thing up. I don't really want to, because I feel like there's really a lot more that we can talk about. But
I could talk for years about this.
I could not have guessed. But I do want to leave with this question: what is next, both for the animated series and for the comic itself?
Yeah, I'm kind of desperate to get back to the comic. It's been quite an adventure these past few years working on this thing, and it's been amazing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But yeah, I've also been kind of longing to go back to just the quiet of my mind, where I'm writing and drawing comic panels a little bit. But at the same time, this thing took off in a way that we didn't quite expect, and so we are now looking for, we kind of had to resign ourselves to like, okay, we want to make more. We knew that, but we didn't know if we'd be able to, or if we'd have the justification to do that. So when we released it, we were just like, if this is all there is, we tried our hardest. We did the best we absolutely could, with the budget we had and the time we had, and the crew we had was amazing. And that's all we can really say is like, we can be proud of this. We did our thing. And if that's it, that's all there is, and we have to walk away smiling from that. And everything I feel
else
like
was out of our control, so it's like you can only hope for what you can realistically hope for, basically, or rather, you can only make that like the base goal, and you could hope for better, but
Yeah. So we were thinking, in my mind, I was looking at other things that I thought were comparable, and looking at like their viewership and stuff, and like how did they manage their releases, and that sort of thing. And I was thinking, I don't know, based on a lot of what I'm seeing on YouTube, maybe this thing will like totter its way to 1 million views or so after 6-8 months. I don't know.
And we only came up with that math after like the trailer did as well as
we had 1 million views in 24-25 hours. So
that was like,
that was like, oh, okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so that my expectations were blown away in a very excellent fashion. And so now we're like, we find ourselves in a position where we have a lot of options. We just have to pick one and work out all the legal details and things in that way. And so, yeah, we're really looking to make more. We know that we're going to make more shorts. We just don't know under what circumstances, if we're going to be doing it for YouTube, if we're going to be doing it for a streaming network of some kind. I don't know yet. But we are exploring all those options very seriously right now. And trying to figure out what our exact next steps are. We just know that we're dedicated to making more of this, and I'm going to also go back and make more comics, because I really need to finish volume 3. Spike's waiting on me for that too. So Spike is also, was our executive producer, but is also my book publisher. So Spike wants another book. So gonna be working.
I'm sure
on
a
that.
lot of people want more books at this point.
I
crashed the website.
I got a lot of new comic readers out of that, that release too, which was great. So I do have a lot of people going like, well, when's the next comic update? When's the next comic update? I'm like, I'm working on it. Give me a minute. I haven't had a day off in like 2 years. So,
come on, it's fine. Who needs sleep?
Just like, give me a minute to just get my feet back underneath me. But, but it's been a flurry of activity since the premiere. We kind of thought things would go quiet after that, but they have not.
No,
and that's but that's a good thing. And however, worn out we are, we all need a break, but we're it'll be a happy break where we know we've got like a path in front of us where we're gonna find a way to make more of this, and I'm really excited about that. So
excellent. All right, well, Tracy, Fable, Zach, and somewhere in the background there is Zach's cat. I did see you for a second. I saw the cat.
There he is.
I saw the cat for a second.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much
beautiful man.
Aw. It's a pretty
Who's
cat.
behind you, Tracy?
Oh, that's Yellow Cat over there. He's very old man. Yeah, Snooze in there.
And my
And
cat
Gigi
is-
was on my lap for most of the time, but you probably couldn't see her at all. I don't know. She was a little under the camera, but yeah.
My cat is somewhere around here. I guess he's feeling shy. But anyway, thank you all so much. I've really enjoyed talking about this. Of course, loving the comic, loving the pilot. And for the folks at home, you go to lackadaisycast.com. It's all there. Find this thing on YouTube. Watch it. Of course, follow the creators, follow the voice actors. Let them know what you think. And certainly hoping for another installment for the comic and for the pilot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This is Matches Malone, and you're watching Citywide Blackout. Justice for all.
And that brings this episode to a close. Thanks to everyone for listening, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook at Citywide Blackout and Twitter and Instagram at CitywideMax. You can reach me at citywidemax@yahoo.com to suggest a guest or submit music for the Blackout Collection playlist. You can find the show wherever you check out your favorite podcasts, and new episodes are aired every Saturday at 10 p.m. EST on Boston Free Radio. That's all for now, and I'll see you next time.